Hi there, I'm Dr. Gila, and I have another great interview that I think is going to really support a lot of you out there. This is a conversation I had with Jill Kaufman. Like me, Jill is a licensed therapist and a coach. Her coaching is specifically focused on thriving through divorce, and that's actually the name of her coaching program. She also has a book and an online course called I'm Getting Divorced. Now what? And today we are going to talk about how to communicate with a difficult ex. One of the main tools that we're going to talk about is a communication technique that was originally introduced, I believe, by Bill Eddy. And it can be incredibly helpful in guiding how you communicate with anyone, not just an ex, but with anyone who you find it difficult to communicate with. You have high conflict, but you do need to coordinate to communicate in some capacity or another. This is a technique that I've used with my clients, and I know Jill uses it extensively with her clients as well. I hope you find it helpful. Let's dive in. Welcome to Single Parenting with Connection, Not Perfection, the podcast that honors your messy reality. It's the support you crave without the usual emotional landmines. I'm your host, Dr. Gila, and I promise I will never tell you to just tag your partner in. Before we start, quick reminder. While I am a licensed psychologist and a certified coach, this podcast is not coaching and it's not therapy, and it's not a replacement for medical or psychological advice. It is for educational and informational purposes only. All right, let's dive in. Welcome, Jill. So glad to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So today we're talking all about self-care, and people often think of self-care as bubble baths and massages, which are lovely. But one of the things, especially when you're in a high conflict divorce, that I think we don't think of as self-care, but absolutely is how do you take care of yourself in these really difficult communications with your ex? So of course you have someone that you're forced to continue communicating with because of co-parenting, but you really don't want to. So I'm so glad to have you on here. First of all, Cliff Notes version, what do you think are like the biggest challenges of communications with a co-parent?
Well, so there's so many, but the biggest thing is that you had a relationship prior to now, and that relationship was a much different relationship. So you have all this history with someone, you know them really well, and yet you have to work with them as a totally separate person. Now you're working with them as just like a colleague or a coworker without all the emotions, without all the connections, without all the responsibilities and expectations. And a lot of people have a hard time making that shift. Yeah. And so the first thing that people have to realize is that no matter what you've done before, you have to think about them in a different way. You have to think about them as, would I say this to someone I work with? Would I, do this in a work situation? So that's one of the biggest challenges, thinking about the person in a different way. Mm-hmm. And then another is that, there's a lot of emotion, right? When you are dealing with your kids and you disagree. And, if you're getting divorced, you probably had trouble communicating and agreeing in the past. How do you do it now when you're not, going to stay married? So those are some of the big challenges. There's so many though.
Yeah. So really the transition, like shifting your expectations and shifting the dynamic, and then keeping it from being emotion driven. It sounds like really being able to think of things in a little more detached, maybe? Is that,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the more detached you can get, the better, because when you're triggered, or if you're emotional, you're not thinking with your prefrontal cortex. You're thinking with your the base of your brain, the amygdala, and it's just, you're going to fight or you're going to run away. And those are probably not the best things to do when you're co-parenting. And so you really have to learn to take a deep breath. You have to have skills so that you can calm yourself down, so that you can walk away, seeing people face to face is probably not the best way to communicate. So you do have to have a lot of tools in your toolbox.
Yeah. And one thing that I think is important in terms of like what you just said, I want to call out here is to have the perspective and the empathy for yourself that if you are handling it in a way that you don't love, or if you're getting really upset, that there is this very neurobiological reason why it's hard to handle these conversations in a level-headed way.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, it's one of the most difficult parts of all of the process, right? It's dealing with somebody who you have all this emotional baggage and anger and sadness or whatever it is you're feeling. And so you're going to lose it. You're not going to react the right way all the time.
Yeah.
But the good news is, there's always tomorrow and you can do it differently. And so being kind to yourself is a huge piece of this.
Yeah, I love that. And that parallels what we're going to talk a lot about across this summit in terms of parenting and our communications with our kiddos and our interactions with our kiddos, right? To embrace and to expect that we're going to make mistakes, we're going to do things that we regret, and that's an opportunity for growth and for progress. Yeah,
Exactly.
And when you were talking about that the transition is part of what's the hardest, do you notice that do people tend to come to a place where it does get easier as they're out of that like transitional period?
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
the really ironic thing about it is you have to start co-parenting right when you're going through divorce, right? And that's the most erratic, emotional, crazy time, right? Because you're literally adversaries, right? You're literally fighting about finances and parenting and all the things that you need to get through when you're going through divorce. And you have to be calm and you have to be rational and you have to think about the children. And it's so difficult, especially in the beginning. And I had a very high conflict divorce and, a few years out, and now we're like over 10 years out, we have a very good relationship, and there's a lot less emotion than there was in the beginning. So it absolutely gets better. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm sure some people are listening and saying, well, I'm 10 years out and it's still a nightmare. So I imagine, if you're listening and thinking that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. I wonder if someone is feeling in that sort of stuck place, if there can still be this sort of protracted transition. I know things are constantly evolving. And so if you have a message of hope that they can still get to that other side.
Yeah. I mean, if someone's 10 years out and they're still fighting in court and there's still terrible, communication, that's really hard, because that's like, you want to be done at that point. But what I can say is that you can only control yourself, right? Yep. So they could file things in court, they could say things that are upsetting you, but you can really take it with a grain of salt. You can really detach and you can really say, you know what, I'm never going to be able to control them, and whatever they do, they're going to do. And so even if it is still high conflict between the two of you, you don't have to be high conflict. You can be more level-headed and just change your expectations so that this person's always going to respond in a high conflict way. What am I going to do? Am I going to bother asking them to switch parenting time? No, I don't think I'm going to bother doing that. Am I going to try to do things that I know they're not going to agree with? No, I'm going to just work around that because I don't want to deal with that chaos. And so there are things you can do. And at some point you won't be seeing each other or dealing with each other that much.
Yeah, I know it's easier said than done, but that is absolutely the central tenet that I find myself repeating over and over with clients as well, that the only behavior you can control is your own. And the frustrating part is it means you can't control other people's behavior, but the empowering part is that you can control your own behavior. And I think this is so helpful to keep in mind with our kids also, and certainly with our exes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is empowering. I mean, you have to remember that, like, that is the only way you can take your power back, is
Yeah.
by changing the way you react to them. Because if you continually try to change their behavior, you feel helpless, and
Yeah.
it's very frustrating, and you're going to be stuck in that battle.
Right. So there's like a level of acceptance. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
acceptance and maybe flexibility, like adapting to, yeah.
And giving up. Like, I remember when my kids were young, I thought I had to control everything so that they were protected, so that everything was done, so that they were okay. But giving up that like idea that you can protect them from everything, and that you
Yeah.
can be the one to be there for everything that they need, you just can't, you know?
Yeah.
And they learn. What I tell parents all the time is like, kids, there is positives when you're going through divorce, or
Hmm.
you are separate from their other parent, where they learn how to set boundaries themselves, they learn how to take care of themselves more, they learn how to manage things better. So let them learn those really good
Yeah.
lessons, and recognize that they could be better off because of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember reading about a research study that was showing that especially when there is conflict leading up to the divorce, that it's so much healthier, and it's a relief for everyone in some ways when sort of the reality is acknowledged and accepted and you go separate ways. The kids don't have to feel that tension, and or at least maybe they still feel the tension, but it's different, and they can be in their home without feeling it
Yeah,
actively.
it's totally different, because when you're in a home together,
Yeah.
your child is witnessing that tension
Yeah.
every day, all day long. When you're in two separate homes, even if one home is, high conflict or difficult for the child to navigate, the other home is peaceful
Yeah.
and can be peaceful and
Yeah.
happy, and children benefit from that too.
Yeah. And that's what you have control over. That's what we have control over, right? Is
Exactly.
our home, our relationship with our kids. So are there specific tips, suggestions that you have when there is a lot of tense communication, high conflict?
Absolutely. A lot of tips. So,
Yeah.
um, the biggest thing that I use with people is it's something called the BIF method. And so when you communicate with them, and I highly recommend that you write an email versus face to face, phone, or text, because all of those allow the person to invade your boundaries much easier. So, setting boundaries is really important with people when it's high conflict communication. So,
Yeah.
BIF is being brief, informative, friendly, and firm. And when you are communicating by email, you can think this through, you can look it over, you can calm down, you can really do this type of communication easier. When you're on text, it's not going to be as easy. So you want to be brief. You don't want to go on and on and on, pages and pages of email. You don't want to do that. You want to be very brief, say it as succinctly as possible. You want to be informative. You just want to focus on the facts, right? You don't want to talk about my opinion, or this is the way I feel, or don't you agree that you feel this way. You really just want to say, like, I'd like to bring Sally to my work function on Friday during your parenting time. It's special for the children. A lot of the people will be there with children, and I think she'd really appreciate it. It's from 3 to 5 on Friday. And so brief, informative, friendly. It's really important that you're friendly. So that means would really appreciate if you would be open to this, and I love how you put the children first all the time. Even if that's not always true. Whatever
Mm.
it is, to be friendly, say something complimentary, and then firm. If I don't hear from you by Thursday at 5 p.m., I'll assume that the answer is no.
Ooh, I like
So,
that.
like, you set a firm boundary, so that you're not just sitting there waiting for
Yeah.
them to do something, and then they never do it, and then you don't know what to do.
Yeah. Oh, I particularly like that. I think that's a piece that so many of us forget, right? Here's my boundary, and I'm not going to open-endedly wait for you. This is what's going to happen.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
I
Yeah,
love
and
that.
then you're taking back that control.
Yeah.
You're not saying, like, oh, I'm hoping that you say yes, please, let me know. And then you're like sitting there waiting and then you don't know
Yeah.
what to do about telling your work if you're going or not. So yeah, it
Yeah.
just puts you in a bad situation. You have to make sure that you set a boundary about when you would hear back.
Yeah. And I assume it should be realistic, right? So we don't want to say, if you don't reply in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to assume, right?
Right.
So realistic. It's interesting. So you were saying you recommend email over text. I understand email versus face to face. Talk to me about email versus text.
Well, I mean, for little things, text is fine. But if you're writing all that in a text, that's hard you know, to read. So,
Hmm.
plus you might be getting the person when they're not ready to hear it or to read it. So they might just get annoyed and say something rude back.
Yeah.
Whereas email, people usually sit down and read their email when they have some time and they're,
Mm.
calmer. So that's why, I'd avoid using text if there's anything that could
Yeah.
be emotional. But
That
you
makes
can use
sense. Yeah.
text, for
Yeah.
little things like I'm going to be there in 5 minutes or whatever it is that you're texting,
Yeah.
unless it's really high conflict where there's apps that you can use. Like,
Yeah, I was just going to ask, do you recommend using those apps as opposed to, because that's another way to have the communications less intrusive because you can manage the
yeah.
notifications. Yeah.
Well, it could work. It's a pain in the neck, because you have another app that you have to deal with and
Yeah.
check. So if you don't need it, I would not use it. And plus, I have clients who fight over how they're going to use the app. You know what I mean? Like if it's really high conflict. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't bring it up unless there was serious problems with the way that things are going by email, by regular email, or if you need things for court. It's much easier to prove it if you use Our Family Wizard or some of these other apps.
Okay.
But if necessary, you can use those apps. But if not, I would just use regular email.
Email. Yeah. And I would also add, probably it varies. I mean, if your ex is someone who doesn't use email regularly, then that's probably not a good method of communication. So it probably varies.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's really important that you have a way to communicate that's not intrusive
Yeah.
if you have a high conflict situation. So
Yeah.
I would prefer email
Yeah.
versus anything else. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
why wouldn't
So,
they?
yeah. So I love the BIF acronym. So brief, informative, friendly, and what
Firm.
was the firm?
Firm.
Okay,
Yeah.
friendly and firm. So when, let's say you receive a message from your ex, it's very emotionally triggering for you. You're probably having difficulty accessing the informative and friendly style, right? Do you have tips on what you do in that? Like, first of all, you pause, I assume, right? You don't respond right away.
Right.
Any tips on how you get yourself to a place where you can do the BIF communication?
Yeah, yeah, there's a bunch of things you can do. Well, first of all, never answer a text or email right away if you are emotional, because you're not going to answer it correctly. I can't tell you how many times I would like type in something and then delete it, and then say, okay, I'm going to answer this later. Because, when you get triggered,
Yeah.
it's that like your heart's beating, your blood's pumping, and you want to answer right away. But it's
Right.
the worst thing to do,
Yeah.
So like you definitely have to pause. You can put it away for an hour, a day. There's no rush to answer most of these things. So definitely pause. I mean, there's a bunch of things that you can do. For when I have a visualization that I use with my clients, and it's called the bubble technique. So you imagine you're in like a bubble that's protective, and then your soon-to-be ex or your ex is in their own bubble, and all of a sudden their bubble starts coming over to you when they send the text or they say something or something, do something, and it's coming over and it's coming over and you're getting, all worked up.
Yeah.
Then imagine like a golden waterfall falling from the sky in between your two bubbles, pushing their bubble away. So then you are alone in your bubble, all protective, and take like a deep breath. And it's very, that's
Yeah.
like kind of one of the tools that I use. But like really, there's lots of things like you can do some kind of exercise, get out and walk, being in nature is really helpful,
Mhm.
drinking water, doing a wall sit. There's lots of things that are physically, you really need to do something physical
Mhm.
sometimes to get yourself out of that reactivity.
Yeah.
And just know that it's normal. It's normal for you to be reacting in an emotional way to someone who you were emotionally connected to. So
Yeah.
the more you can accept that and be okay with it and realize that, okay, what do I need to do? And I have so many different tools like that, that people really just like write down a whole list of things that help you. And deep
Yeah.
breathing, deep abdominal breathing,
Mhm.
which is different than chest breathing. Chest breathing is when your chest goes up and down. Your
Yeah.
deep abdominal breathing is when your stomach goes out when you breathe in,
Mhm.
and that enables the brain to release a hormone that relaxes you. So there's so
Yeah.
many different little
I was
tools.
just reaching over because I have one of these at my desk. So I like to say, imagine you've swallowed one of these and you're inhaling to expand it in your belly and then
Yeah.
contracting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love and this actually, this could be your bubble too.
Right.
I love the bubble visual. And I noticed that as you were saying it, like my nervous system just like sighed this sort of sigh of relief as you were talking about it. So
Yeah.
powerful. Yeah.
No, visualizations work. I mean, so many things work, but you just have to be committed to, using them.
Yeah, yeah. And I also wonder, so sometimes I think that these messages that we get from our exes hijack our day, right? Because then you're ruminating over what to say and things that you want to be able to say, but you shouldn't say. They don't fall into the biff, but you really want to say them. Do you recommend, like, I think journaling could be
Yeah.
really helpful to like write that message that you wish you could say. Don't
Yeah.
send it, but at least like give yourself permission to get it out, so that it's not sort of festering and ruminating in your
I
brain.
mean, journaling is a great tool. I
Yeah.
highly recommend it because you have lots of thoughts in your head.
Yeah.
Talking to a friend, a support group, a therapist. Some people do art, they draw it. There's lots of ways to
Yeah.
get those things out, but you do have to get it out because if
Yeah.
you don't, it's inside of you and it's going to stay there. So you do
Exactly.
have to either, a divorce coach, even, like
Hmm.
anybody who's a mental health kind of in that area
Yeah.
would be helpful. And just don't try to do it by yourself. This is
Yeah.
too hard for us to try to deal with all of this on your own. And
Hmm.
there's so much support and options out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, because as I'm listening to you talking about the BIF communication, it's like there's this, it has energy, right? This stuff that you want to say, and what comes up for me is that there's a need to be heard in it, and to really for it to be received and to be heard. And the reality is that your ex, even if you said it, is probably not really going to see and hear it. So finding a place to put it where it will be seen and heard, even though it's frustrating that you can't say it to the person you want to, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, no, it is really helpful and it's healing. It's part of the healing
Yeah.
process. It's like, the sadness, the grief, the anger, all that stuff has to be expressed in order to
Yeah.
heal.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Thank you. I think that BIF method is super helpful. So brief, informative, friendly, firm. Got
Yeah.
it. You have a free offering for folks. Do you want to tell them about it? Because I think it ties in really nicely.
Yeah, it's 8 guidelines for separated and divorcing parents, and it just kind of goes over the basic things that you really need to think about when you're parenting and co-parenting with, someone who you're divorcing. And it's really important to get as much help and support as you possibly can. And I have so much more than that. Like
Yeah.
that's just like the tip of the iceberg, but it's important.
Yeah. I like to say, even if you're doing it on your own, you don't have, oh, I just messed up my own motto. Even if you're on your own, you don't have to do it alone. And
Right.
giving yourself permission to reach out for and accept support is like the ultimate in self-care, isn't it? I mean, it's a big piece of it. Yeah.
Right. And we think as parents, we don't have time, we don't have time to do that, but it's your kids' benefit. If
Yeah.
you're a happier, healthier person, your kids will
Yeah.
be better.
And sometimes it takes more time if you don't do it, right? Like we were just talking about, it hijacking your whole day, this one message. And so either you can ruminate it on your own for the whole day, or you can get some support for a few minutes and move on with your day. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Love it. All right. Well, thank you so much. So we were just talking about relationship with your ex, but we're going to shift to, is there a way in your life that you foster connection either with yourself or with your kiddos that you want to share?
Well, my kids are all grown,
Mm,
so I'm constantly trying to connect with them. But
yeah.
in terms of myself, I really put a priority on, doing things because I made the mistake in my marriage of not, connecting with myself. And now it's like a super priority. But like the
Mm,
one thing that I always love to do is go and get like a chai latte. That's like, and I go by myself and I go for a walk and I just enjoy it and it's peaceful.
yeah.
And so like that to me is, it's something that is like a little treat that I do.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that, in some ways, one of the gifts of divorce is that it does help you see the things that you've been compromising on, neglecting, that you want to prioritize more. And it sounds like
Yeah.
that's what it did for you.
Oh yeah. No, it
Yeah.
totally changed me because I did everything. It was like kids, kids, kids. I can't take care of myself,
Yeah.
And then I was like, I only have them 50% of the time. I better think of other things I have to do.
Yeah. 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 Awesome. And so my whole thing is perfection, connection without perfection. So is there a place in your life that you embrace, lean into imperfection?
Oh my God, everything.
So many places.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, it's so funny because I think you become, as you get older, you just kind of let yourself, don't have so many high expectations anymore. You just kind of want to live and enjoy life and really be okay with things that are not perfect. But I guess for me, it's like, not having everything organized in my house the way that I used to have it. I actually got a dog. And once you get a dog, like that, it goes out the window. They're like, muddy and wet and like everything is messy. And I'm like, whatever. I let her go on the couch and, let everything kind of be comfortable as opposed
Yeah.
to how I used to want everything to be clean and
Yeah.
everything like that. So
That sounds like a source of connection that sort of forced you to embrace imperfection.
absolutely. Yeah. Oh my God. I
Yeah.
connect with my dog. Oh, it's the best. I highly
Yeah.
recommend dogs.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jill. And of course, links to connect with Jill will be on this page. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
That's it for this episode. I am so glad you found your way here. And remember, even if you're on your own, you don't have to do it alone. You've got this.